During Operation Sindoor, India not only bombed and decimated 9 terror camps, including the headquarters of Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed at Murid and Bahawalpur, but also subsequently punched holes in Pakistani air defense, bombing 6 radar stations and then 11 Pakistani Air Force bases. Now, how will this pact impact India's future either response or preemptive strikes against Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror? I put that question to Air Chief Marshal R.K.S. Bhadoria, former Chief of Air Staff, on Battle Cry. Listen in. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have just inked a defense pact. What does that mean for the future operations that India may want to undertake against Pakistan, a future Operation Sindoor? Would it mean that now we cannot undertake any more action against terror?
Yeah, this is a new development, and I think the government response is already there, that they are studying the situation and studying the fine print, of course. But the straight question that you asked, no defense pact would permit any state, and Pakistan in particular, for utilizing terror as part of their state policy, unstate policy. So if they think that they can get away from a terrorist strike with this, I think they are mistaken. So if your question is whether it will prevent Op Sindoor, answer is no.
It won't prevent another Operation Sindoor.
Because there we are attacking terrorists. We are not attacking Pakistan.
But then when Pakistan attacks us, no, now the Prime Minister also made it very clear that there is no distinction between state and non-state actors. The Prime Minister is very clear on that. Next time, they won't be attacking terrorists first. Pakistani air defenses would be taken down first, isn't it?
No, it will depend on the situation. And it will depend on what has transpired. And in response to that act, and it is obvious that the terrorists will be attacked straight away. Okay, and it's not from our side, it's not a declaration of war with Pakistan. So let us see the final print of this pact. But any such situation, it will be responded to, be rest assured.
So is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan Mutual Defense Pacts just optics, or is it formalizing an existing security architecture and bringing Pakistani nuclear umbrella over Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to defend against Israel? So we have experts from India and we have experts from West Asia joining us on this special broadcast. I have Group Captain M.J. Augustine Vinod, former fighter pilot and a drone expert, joining us on this show. Ambassador Veena Sikri is a top former diplomat, joins us on this show. Dr. Wael Awad, a very well-respected political analyst and senior international correspondent keeping a hawk eye on developments in West Asia, joins us. And also with me on this broadcast is Dr. Shuki Friedman, who's Director General of the Jewish People's Policy Institute, joins us from Israel. And Sandeep Unithan is a top journalist who joins us on this special broadcast. Dr. Awad, let me begin by asking you. Pakistani pilots have been flying Saudi jets since the 1960s. As you well know, Pakistani commandos were a part of fighting that siege of the Grand Mosque. So what's happened now? Is this just a formalization of an agreement, or is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia hedging after the Israeli strikes on Qatar?
Absolutely is the second part of your question, Gaurav, which is absolutely correct. The changing of the geopolitical situation in West Asia, especially after the Israeli attack on Qatar, which have put all the GCC countries at a vulnerable stage, losing their trust and credibility to the United States, who is supposed to be considered the GCC as the custodian for its protection, for its security, for its interest. In fact, the American did not even hesitate in threatening the USSR those days, that these are our area of interest. If you involve yourself or interfere there, we will not be reluctant to use a nuclear weapon. So therefore, this is what happened. Now Israel attacked Qatar. Ministers in Israel are saying that Saudi Arabia, 1/3 of Saudi Arabia is part of the greater Israel, which is including Medina and Mecca, which is Saudi felt they are more vulnerable now. If nobody can protect any of these people, so there are lots of reapproachment and realliances in the region, whether it is Saudi and Egypt, whether it's Saudi or Pakistan, or whether it is Turkey and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia in the future. So I think it's just a matter of a nuclear deterrent for to be protecting Saudi Arabia. Nothing else to read on this.
Okay. Ambassador Sikri, does India have reason to be worried? Is this agreement disadvantage India?
No, I don't think so. I think, as our spokesman said, of course, India will study the agreement carefully. But we do know that India-Saudi Arabian relations have seen a huge growth and great strength in the last year. Our Prime Minister Modi, has been awarded the highest honor, the Order of King Abdul Aziz, which is very rare honor to be given to a foreign leader. Saudi investments in India have grown 10 billion and more, and many more expected, because Saudi Arabia is looking to invest its huge amount of funding into India. They find the Indian market very attractive. They find Indian investments very stable and a good return on them. So I think that process will definitely continue. And because of this good relationship, our Prime Minister was there earlier this year in the month of April. I'm sure there can be direct talks between India and Saudi Arabia on this. Frankly, my position is, I do think that Pakistan, the narrative that Pakistan is trying to spread at all times is about their victory in Operation Sindhu. Every time, for their own people, they said, we are the victors, we've done this, that, and the other. And they've completely ignored all the factual, visual evidence about the destruction on their airfields and runways and command control centers, and of course, the terrorist hideouts as well, from Muridkep and Bawalpur and other places. So after the war, not only yielding this narrative in their own country, they also then went, Asim Munir had that lunch with President Trump to show that now America wants Pakistan. And of course, they've sold, so much of these crypto and other things, and President Trump's family also has investments now in Pakistan. And now again with Saudi Arabia, to show that how Saudi Arabia also wants Pakistan. So this is a narrative that they are really wanting to build up. We do know that the defense relationship between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan is of long standing. It has its
Yes.
ups and downs, but it's of very long standing. So it's not
Fair
anything
enough.
new. So I do think that this is something that we have to look at very carefully, but not to be worried about. I think the attack on Qatar was a very major shock for the West Asian countries. But whether this agreement between Qatar and between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan is the beginning of a collective Islamic NATO, I don't think so, because Israel and Saudi
Let me take this open. Give me a moment, ma'am. Let me, widen the horizon and keep it for a moment on India, and then widen it to the Islamic NATO. Group Captain Vinod, when Pakistan could not defend itself against India, Pakistan may be lying, their army may be lying to their people, and they may stupidly believe their army chief who promoted himself. But it's a fact, 11 Pakistani air bases were decimated. And Saudi Arabia knows that, America knows that. How will it defend the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and from whom, when it can't defend itself?
Gaurav, you just took the punchline out of what I was going to say. See, the biggest question is, they have taken a leave from the Article 4 and Article 5 of NATO and said attack on one will be construed as attack on the other. So it is verbatim from Article 5. Now, the question again remains, with Shaheen 3's 2,750 kilometers of range, which covers the entire Middle East. Now, will Shaheen 3 be fired if Saudi gets attacked by Israel? Is a very big question mark. On paper, yes, it will, because attack on one is construed on attack on the other. I tend to disagree with what Chief said, and the question that you asked him also, that when we attack their air bases, which is direct attack on military, will Saudi either attack India or give the arsenal to Pakistan to be used against India? That is question number two. Could it all be a show or a big change showing America can't be trusted anymore? But it is interesting to watch, like a new game where, Islamic nations now wanting to take charge. For them, it is power in numbers, weapons and faith, both holding hands. For the rest, it is a warning. So in the end, the agreement, as I say, Gaurav, is more than just a piece of paper. It
So
is a
it's
plan
more
for
than
a very
optics, is what
strong
you're saying.
defense. No, and
Sandeep,
also one
Sandeep.
question. I want to leave one question. What happened to the post-Cold War non-aligned movement, which is now in the cold storage? What happens to that? That is a very big question. Over to you.
Okay, non-alignment died a long time back. It's an era of being multi-aligned. But let me throw that to Ambassador Veena Sikri in a moment. But Sandeep, is this Pakistan's biggest dream, that its nuclear bomb is that Islamic bomb to protect the entire Ummah? A pauper Pakistan now wanting to show that I need money from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from other countries because I have the Islamic bomb to protect the Ummah.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And in fact, from the very beginning, Pakistan has leaned on the Arab countries, on the Muslim countries to finance its weapons program, starting from Muammar Gaddafi of Libya to the Saudi Arabians in the 80s and the 90s. And we have several testimonials from former officials of Pakistan's Strategic Plans Division that Saudi money was used to fund Pakistan's nuclear weapons program. And about in 2013, the BBC had an investigative documentary where they spoke of a cash and carry deal that Saudi Arabia had with Pakistan, that in exchange for the cash, they would be allowed to use a certain number of Pakistani nuclear warheads in an emergency. And that emergency is, of course, Iran going nuclear. And there's also talk of the IRBMs, the Dongfeng 2 IRBMs that Saudi Arabia has bought from China. The warheads for that would be the Pakistani nuclear weapons. So all of this was there in the closet for several years now, all of these deals. But now, the unpredictability of the West Asia, the fact that the United States has not been seen as a reliable ally, all of these old problems have come out in the open. Saudi Arabia is clearly worried, as Ambassador Sikri said, by the attack on Qatar. And it is looking for a nuclear umbrella of some sort. And Pakistan is there. It needs money. And it's leveraging its Islamic bomb to, get itself some money.
So whatever happened to nuclear non-proliferation, America turned a blind eye to it earlier. Is America doing so once again? Dr. Shuki Friedman, did the Israeli strikes on Qatar actually weaken the US position in West Asia? Qatar is extremely angry. And how do you view Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's mutual defense agreement with Pakistan in Israel?
First of all, this new pact is definitely might be bad news for the region because it's clear that it changed in a way the balances in the region between the Shiite and the Sunni states, and also between the Arab countries and Israel. Israel, according to foreign sources, holds some nuclear warheads, and so far was the only state in the region and one of 9 in the world that have nuclear capabilities. But while Saudi Arabia never started to initiate a project to develop nuclear capabilities and also weapon, the possibility that the nuclear head of the Islamic Pakistan will be relevant to the consideration and strategies in the region change a lot for Israel, but also for other countries in the region, because it's not just Iran, of course, that on the other side of this balance, but also Egypt and other countries that might seek the ability to produce or maybe purchase such capabilities. And the main concern that raised by Iranian bomb is a nuclear race in the Middle East. It might change this course and start a nuclear race in the Middle East.
It'll start a nuclear race in West Asia, is your appreciation. Dr. Vailawad, Saudi Arabia today, Qatar under that same umbrella tomorrow. Do you see that happen? And what does this mean, for Pakistan's other neighbor, Iran? Will it lead to escalations of tensions with Iran, tensions between Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Pakistan, Iran?
Now, why, Gaurav, the tension has to be with Iran? That is the American narrative that they have been telling the Gulf country, be careful from Iran, they will invade you, they will conquer you. And here you go, Israel.
Okay, Dr. Awad, give me a moment as I try and reestablish that link with you, sir. Give me 30 seconds. We'll just reestablish that link with you. But Ambassador Sikri, Pakistan is playing this game very deftly, very nimble-footed. When Imran Khan was at the helm of affairs, Pakistan just did a 180 degrees, because that time with Turkey and Malaysia, Pakistan was talking about an alternate enlightened ummah, and suddenly Pakistan is back with Saudi Arabia. It just shows that Pakistan is playing almost all sides, and if I may, quite well.
Well, I don't think so quite well. I think they're very easily exposed. For example, when Iran was facing the attack from America, they said, oh, you know, Pakistan has promised us that if there's an attack on Iran, then by America, then Pakistan will come to the help. Nothing happened. Pakistan didn't show up anywhere. So Pakistan's ability to match its deeds with its words is severely limited. It's severely limited. Do you think that, you know, you're talking about Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have a pact, defense pact? Who is Saudi Arabia fearing an attack from? Israel or USA? So if USA attacks Saudi Arabia, is Pakistan going to come to the defense? Because Pakistan's own relations with America are at a different level. And if Israel attacks Saudi Arabia, again, Israel has a very close defense agreement with the USA. So is Pakistan going to defend, Saudi Arabia from attack against Israel? So these are, you know, highly, the moment you go to the next step of implementation of matching deeds with words, Pakistan gets exposed immediately. So I think while it may look very good on paper, I think that this narrative is really to strengthen Pakistan's show for its own people and what they think is their own relevance in the world. And certainly, you know, with America, they have been able to do it because of cryptocurrency, because of the deals on crypto, the deals on critical minerals. But they say those critical minerals have already been promised to China. So where is it? Where is what at? So I do cast a doubt on Pakistan's ability to match its deeds with words. But I would like to say directly that India will certainly maintain its own position on describing every act of terror as an act of war. And we've said that Operation Sindoor is only in a ceasefire in the Bagram. And if any other act of terror comes, we will resume. We will not be deterred by this kind of an agreement or anything like that. We have our own relationship with Saudi Arabia. We will certainly be holding talks with them, I'm sure, very soon to find out the details. And Saudi Arabia themselves have given a strong statement saying that they expect that good relations with India will continue to get a good boost. They value their relationship with India. So let's not get carried away, but certainly it's something that we will look at very carefully, no doubt about it.
Okay, Dr. Awad, if I have that link back with you, is this like an Islamic Article 5 NATO-like Islamic states coming together, countries coming together? It's Pakistan and Saudi Arabia right now. Qatar and perhaps other Sunni Muslim countries may join in, or in your appreciation, will Shia Muslim countries also perhaps gradually join in?
Absolutely not. I don't see any Islamic bomb. You cannot call a nuclear deterrence as a nuclear or it's an Islamic bomb. This is something that is not to be used. It's supposed to be a deterrence. It's simply trying to protect a nuclear shield to Japan and South Korea. I mean, everybody wanted to be protected because of North Korea. We have the same problem. It's only Israel in Middle East and West Asia who is having the nuclear weapon. So if somebody protecting you, preventing an attack on your country, I don't see India should worry. I tell you something, Gaurav. Saudi Arabia position for the last decade have been very lenient toward India. Even Pakistan felt that one. The resentment in Islamabad was very strong about India position, Saudi position. They wanted to invest $200 billion in the Indian market. If you want to put this much money in India, will they go for an India attack on India? I don't see this is going to be, I mean, we do not want to hype it. Nevertheless, we need to study. You need the assurances from your partner that this is nothing to do with India-Pakistan issue.
Oh, I agree with you entirely. India has very, very warm, ties with Saudi Arabia. And these, again, have been civilizational from ancient times. Dr. Shuki Friedman, Pakistani generals and political leaders, they boast they are the only country with the capability of targeting Israel. They have the only country that have the missiles that can target Israel. Pakistani terrorists, as you well know, have been involved in killing Israeli citizens on Indian soil during 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. Does the Pakistan Kingdom of Saudi Arabia agreement limit Israel's options in the region?
As I said before, it definitely changed the situation and balances, and I don't think that Israel is thinking or considering in any circumstances attacking Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not an enemy for Israel, and hopefully we might be able to normalize our relations with Saudi Arabia soon, and the Saudis will join to the Abraham Accord agreements. But definitely Saudi Arabia now, while actually had the ability or partly theoretical ability to have this ally with the Pakistani nuclear weapon, is changing the consideration for Israel as well. Having said that, I think it's quite, for now, theoretical that this pact will have an implementation or direct implementation toward Israel. It's true
Okay.
that through the war in recent 2 years, Pakistanis declared a few times that they might act against Israel or sit in on Israel. But again, I think Pakistan have its interest and regional interest, and to be engaged with Israel in an armed conflict, I
Okay.
don't see
So
it as
let me
a
bring in Group
interest
Captain
for
Vinod
both
into this
countries.
conversation once again. Group Captain Vinod, is there an apprehension that Pakistan could get sucked into tensions between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, for example? And should that happen, will it increase tensions on Pakistan's other border with Iran?
Good question, Gaurav. See, proof of the pudding is in eating. The paper says very clearly attack on one will be construed as attack on the other. Now, what will come first needs to be seen. In my opinion, um, us attacking Pakistan and Saudi coming to rescue is much less of a possibility than, Houthis or Iran attacking, or maybe Israel attacking Saudi and Pakistan going for rescue. And like Ambassador correctly said, will Pakistan measure up? I really don't know. But since it is on paper, now it is formalized, and against which I am sure, billions of dollars will be doled out to, Asim Munir and Shahbaz Sharif. Will they measure up? If they do, that will be the warning bell. If they
Okay.
do, if Pakistan doesn't do, which I tend to agree with probably Ambassador, that it didn't do in the past, so therefore it wouldn't do in the future, except the fact that it is now inked. So जो काला अक्षर है वो बहुत important है. बहस बराबर है कि नहीं, we will come to know.
Fair enough. Sandeep, in the 1980s, there were some reports that seemed to indicate Israel wanted to strike Pakistan. They wanted to strike before Pakistan could get its nuclear weapon. And that just shows that Israel had seen or wargamed what would happen in the future. They just sought refueling facilities in India, according to some reports. Now, one, will this development lead to closer intelligence and perhaps operational cooperation between India and Israel, especially against a terror state like Pakistan?
Absolutely, Gaurav. There were those reports in the 80s, and this followed the 1981 attack by Israel on Osirak, the Iraqi nuclear reactor facility. And the stories of the early 80s indicate that Israel approached India for refueling facilities for its fighter jets, because they wanted to take out the Kahuta nuclear weapons facility before it actually started producing bomb-grade uranium. Now, that story has never been confirmed officially. It's one of those urban legends that keeps floating around. But there is reason to believe that there was these kind of plans that were planned, because Israel, as we've seen recently and in the past, Gaurav, acts proactively. It does not wait for a problem to present itself at its doorstep. And it was quite possible that they saw this threat emerging and affecting Israel one day, where, as the group captain mentioned, today Pakistan is the only country which has the Islamic bomb and the ability to target Israel with its Shaheen 3 IRBMs, ballistic missiles. So if Pakistan were to posture publicly, if its generals were to come out and threaten Israel, you can very well be assured, Gaurav, rest assured that there will be an Israeli strike against Pakistan's nuclear facilities, and that would come very quickly. So I think Pakistan has been lying low. I mean, there might be private conversations about striking Israel with its ballistic missiles, but publicly, Pakistan has never come out and threatened Israel, because they know that there will be a swift retaliation. And in fact, the point that you made about intelligence cooperation, I'm sure that is already, I have no information about that, but I would imagine that a Pakistani nuclear weapons capability, and especially now with this agreement with Saudi Arabia, is something that would worry Israel greatly. Okay. And it would want more intelligence about Pakistan's special weapons capabilities, Gaurav.
Because with Pakistan, you never know whether state actors have the nuclear weapon or non-state actors will have access to those weapons. But Group Captain Vinod, the concern for India may well be, should there be a next, God forbid, a next terror attack that's traced back to Pakistan? Pakistan will not only have its own fighter jets, it may have access to the Saudi fighter jets. So it may have, numbers on its side. It may have access to other military hardware from Saudi Arabia. Worse, it'll have access to funds from Saudi Arabia. It'll free its own funds to fuel terror in our country.
Absolutely. And Gaurav, I want to correct you. Yeah, when it comes to Pakistan, there is nothing called non-state actor, because everything in and from Pakistan is Pakistan state sponsored. So it is state sponsored. The word non-state actor was, I don't know, in the early 2000s, someone inserted into the realm of discussion, and we are following it to the teeth even till date. I've been saying this for umpteen number of times.
True.
When it comes to Pakistan, it is state sponsored. There is nothing like non-state actor. Now that out of the way, it will. I'm completely agree with you, Gaurav. It will have access to a very high-end military hardware. What we knocked off the AWNC and AWACS, it will have a very deep access to intelligence, which is not only US-based intelligence but also intelligence which is organically developed by Saudis. So, and other than that, like you said, access to funds, but during operations, access to fund has very little meaning except for logistic sustainability post the sustenance period. In case of Pakistan, that is like about a week to 10 days. Post that, the funds will kick in. But if you lose fighters, you cannot replace them during war, be that as it may. Most important part is, the picture speaks a thousand words. We've
Yes.
never seen ever that with the head of the state, the head of the military also goes everywhere, like a tail. You see the visit to China. You see the current visit. You have
No, in
Asim
fact,
Munir tagging along.
yeah. In fact, it's the case
That
of
is
wag the dog. It's the tail that wags the dog in
or the
Pakistan. But and Ambassador Sikri, that should be a major cause for concern for India. The Saudi funds that may now be available to Pakistan to fund terror in India.
Yeah, I think that is the core of the issue, because I think Pakistan is looking not only to reinforce its own relevance in the region and in the world, but it's looking for money all the time. We know that from IMF, that innumerable times have gone to IMF, but IMF conditionalities are something that they've never been able to fulfill. Even now, they're struggling with fulfilling IMF conditionalities, and so future tranches of money are, always being put under a question mark. So certainly, I think by concluding this deal with the with Saudi Arabia, their search for funds is what they hope will come to an end. And long before they are even able to think about, a next war or something like that, because today even some of their runways have not yet been repaired. Their command and control center, they're still trying to dig out people who were there and so on. But they will be seeking to replace all their, Air Force defense. But a lot of this was coming from China. Now we do know that China itself is very peeved with Pakistan because of their overtures to USA. And this has caused, in fact, a great change in China's attitude. And we now recently learned that the flagship BRI project of China, which was the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is no longer going to be financed by China. It's now being given to the ADB for financing.
Yes.
And Pakistan is asking ADB for money, but ADB is saying, we'll charge you commercial rates. So, Pakistan is very seriously strapped for funding. And so I think they are going to use Saudi Arabia's billions, and are they going to buy American weapons with that? I think this is the question that comes to mind very much, because
It indeed does. But let me also play it the other way. Then in the last 1 minute that I have on this part of the show, Dr. Shukri, I want to understand from you, sir, would Israel be concerned that China may try to use the Pakistan route to gain inroads or make deeper inroads into West Asia now that the US appears to be withdrawing its, or is seen to be withdrawing its strong control in that region and not stopping that bombing of Qatar by Israel? So will China occupy that vacuum?
First of all, I don't think that the US is withdrawing from the region. Basically, the attack of Israel on Qatar was against, not Qatar, but against terror leaders
Hamas.
that Qatar sheltered over there. But I think the big picture is that the US, China, Russia, and the US are struggling on the Middle East for a long time. And the US Army have a huge interest in Qatar, and the Air Base, and other interest in Saudi Arabia and so forth. So I think the struggle on the influence, power, and economy of Middle East between China and the US will continue. I definitely see the allies and the Chinese trying to strengthen their connections with Pakistan and with Iran, of course, and in some ways in Saudi Arabia as well, but still the US is very strong in the region, have strong allies in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia and other places, and recently built the corridor just to the northern of the Iranian border to enable strategic allying with the Stanis. So I think US is here, the Chinese are here, and we see both sides trying to hold and to strengthen their holding in the region.
Fair enough. A very, very interesting time to watch this entire region. But there is a cause for concern for India, and that's on our other border. I want to thank Dr. Shuki Friedman for joining me here. There's a big statement that's been made by the American President Donald Trump on Afghanistan. President Donald Trump has said trying to get back the Bagram airfield in Afghanistan, and President Trump is explaining why. He says Bagram in Afghanistan is just an hour away from China's nuclear site. The Bagram airfield, the largest airbase in Afghanistan, lies about 60 kilometers to the north of Kabul. It's a very strategic airbase that US held, and there were many US analysts who said that America should not let go of the Bagram airbase. This was an airbase that was built in the 1950s by the Soviet Union, then USSR, and played a very pivotal role, a central role in the Soviet-Afghan War of 79 to 89 and the American operations that took place in Afghanistan post 9/11 from 2001 to 2021. Today, it's under the control of Taliban. America wants it back. Let's listen in to US President Donald Trump.
They just went through the Afghanistan total disaster for no reason whatsoever. We're going to leave Afghanistan, but we're going to leave it with strength and dignity. And we're going to keep Bagram, the big air base, that one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We're trying to get it back, by the way. Okay, that could be a little breaking news. We're trying to get it back because they need things from us. We want that base back. But one of the reasons we want the base is, as you know, it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. So a lot of things are happening.
I want to quickly bring in Sandeep Punithan for more on this. Sandeep, America wants Bagram back. America had a strategic position in Afghanistan. They just abandoned it, fled. Now they want in once again.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And you know, in fact, I've been to Bagram Air Base, and it's been one of those air bases that's so strategic. It was very, very key when the Soviets were occupying Afghanistan from 79 to 1988. And then later, when the United States entered Afghanistan in 2001, it was a key strategic air base. That is where all the US Special Forces, they had expanded the base. The US invested a lot of money in Bagram Air Base. And that was practically like you could call it a US aircraft carrier in the middle of Afghanistan.
Yes.
And I was surprised, Gaurav, as you were, when the United States pulled out of that, because pulling out of, being in Bagram actually meant that you were, very close to China, because all of China is about an hour's, flying time from Bagram. And, this is actually the new US policy, Gaurav, to ring China with a network of bases, especially in the southern parts of China, the flanks.
Okay.
So you move into Afghanistan, you move into Bangladesh, you move into Myanmar, all of these things, and you encircle China. That seems to be the larger US game plan, which President Trump seems to have
Trying to
revealed.
encircle China, but what would it mean for India? At least for now, President Trump is making all the sweet noises. Will those sweet noises be followed by sweet action? Because some of the action that we've seen in India's neighborhood has been rather hostile. President Trump has spoken on his conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the Prime Minister's birthday when he tweeted to say that he's wished Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his good friend Narendra, a very happy birthday. He says, I'm very close to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I'm very close to India. I spoke to him the other day. I wished him happy birthday. Listen in to President Trump.
Very simply, if the price of oil comes down, Putin's going to drop out. He's going to have no choice. He's going to drop out of that war. And when I found out that the European nations were buying oil from Russia, and as you know, I'm very close to India. I'm very close to the Prime Minister of India. I spoke to him the other day, wished him a happy birthday. We have a very good relationship. He put out a beautiful statement, too. But I said, I sanctioned them. China is paying a very large tariff right now to the United States. But I'm willing to do other things, but not when the people that I'm fighting for are buying oil from Russia. If the oil price comes down, very simply, Russia will settle. And the oil price is way down. We got it way down. We're drilling and we produce more oil than anybody else in the world. We're doing a lot. But I was disappointed to see that. And the Prime Minister was disappointed to see that. And it wasn't him. It was other countries.
Ambassador Veena Sikri stays with me. Professor Brahma Chilani, one of India's best strategic voices, joins me on this broadcast. Professor Chilani, I'll come to Trump on India in just a moment. But how do you see Trump saying, I want to get back Bagram airfield is just an hour away from China?
What it underlines is Trump's expansionism. Ever since he's returned to the White House, he's been seeking to expand America's global footprint. He's also seeking to actually grab additional territories for the US. But look at the irony. US troops today are stationed in at least 172 countries and territories. And he now wants to enter Afghanistan by having Bagram under US control. The US military presence in Bagram may have made sense when US troops were present in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Now he wants to return to Bagram for his expansionist objectives. It will not be good for India's security if US troops are in Bagram, because that will only further reinforce US-Pakistan cooperation. As it is, we are seeing in recent days, US officials and US military officers going to Kabul, talking to the Taliban, negotiating over Bagram and other issues, including the release of some of the funds, central bank funds of Afghanistan that have been frozen by Washington. What we're seeing is growing US-Pakistan cooperation, including in relation to Afghanistan. And this is not good news for India. And to make matters worse, one major development has happened in the last 2 days, which has received no media attention in India, which is that the US quietly has revoked its sanctions exemption for the Chabahar port, which is operated by India. That waiver, exemption, sanctions exception will go effective from September 29th, just a few days from now. And the Indian operator of that Chabahar port could face US sanctions. Now, this is another squeeze of India by the Trump administration, not content with 50% tariffs on India. India is the first and only victim of Trump's secondary sanctions over Russian energy. And now comes this additional step, which basically affects only India.
Interesting that you mentioned this, and I want to bring in Ambassador Sikri. While we mention about America wanting to come into Bagram, it's already in Bangladesh. It's already in Chattogram. How do you see that? They claim that it's exercise lightning shock, but is it just a military exercise? The regime change operation that Sheikh Hasina spoke of, that she refused to give an island, Saint Martin Island, to America, and that's why she was removed. Does it all add up now? And is that a major cause for India to be concerned?
That is certainly what is happening in Bangladesh is certainly a major cause for concern, because we know that under Sheikh Hasina and even before that, there were never any military exercises planned between USA and Bangladesh. Not at all. And not that we were ever told or they were not there at all. But now, after Sheikh Hasina has left Bangladesh and the Yunus-led regime, which has the Jamaat-e-Islami behind them, really, they're in charge. We are seeing that the Americans have gone in. Now, for example, at one time, there was the humanitarian corridor between Bangladesh and Myanmar. And the UN Secretary General proposed it, and America said they would operate it and, send humanitarian aid to the Rakhine state where the Arakan army is evident. But at that point, the Bangladesh army chief opposed it and said, no, we oppose it because it's going to affect the sovereignty of Bangladesh. But today we find that there is two things that happened. One, there has been a non-disclosure agreement signed between Bangladesh and the USA, and we don't know what's in it. Does it allow for this kind of military exercises? We certainly don't know on what basis these very sharp increase in military exercises involving hundreds of American airmen going to Bangladesh is happening, number one. Number two, we do know that there was an intense training of Bangladeshi army officers which was going on. And very recently, at the end of August, we saw a very senior American Special Forces officer died in Western Hotel in Dhaka. And that became a huge issue, but then it's been completely hushed up. But, he was a long-term staying guest at the Western Hotel. And it was being assumed that training the Bangladesh armed forces. Side by side with all of this, we have the Pakistan ISI and senior Pakistan army officers being stationed almost in every division of the Bangladesh army throughout the country. And Asim Munir saying the next attack is going to come from the east. So I do think this is today one of the most serious issues that is there between India and Bangladesh. We need to know from Bangladesh and from USA, because President Trump has spoken so warmly about the global comprehensive partnership between India and USA. He has telephoned our Prime Minister. Our Prime Minister has responded so well. But on this critical issue, it's very important. In China, on Bagram base, in Pakistan, on the relationship now between Asim Munir and President Trump, in Bangladesh, for Bangladesh and for Myanmar, all of these, we're seeing America attacking China in places where China had already worked out deals with all these countries. Now,
it's very interesting. So is it checkmate China, or should red flags, Professor Chilani, also go up in India, because this is very close to sensitive Manipur, to our sensitive northeastern states, where there are reports of foreign interference when that Kuki Meitei tension was on?
You're right, Gaurav. In fact, Manipur is being destabilized by US policy to overthrow the military junta in Myanmar. The US military aid to the rebels in Myanmar, some of that aid, including the militants, are getting into Manipur and even into Mizoram. So the northeast of India, which is a very vulnerable part of India, risks getting destabilized. And I think the broader point we should not note that even though the US and India have this what's called comprehensive and global strategic partnership, but in India's own immediate neighborhood, US and Indian interests are so divergent, because whether it's Bangladesh, Myanmar, Pakistan, or even Nepal, the US and India are not on the same page. And as far as Bangladesh is concerned, I think we should, there's certain facts that speak for themselves. The US targeted the Sheikh Hasina government. And it backed the overthrow of Hasina. Since then, the US has been silent over the human rights abuses, repression, and Islamist violence in Bangladesh. In fact, Washington has turned a blind eye to the Yunus regime reversing bans on jihadist groups that were previously linked to terrorism and releasing notorious Islamist leaders, including convicted terrorists. Yunus has openly partnered with Islamists since taking office.
In fact,
worse
Sandeep and I will have much more on this with you and Ambassador Sikri, Professor Chilani, in the days to come. I've sadly run out of time on this part of the show, but it's a very, very worrisome development that's taking place all around India. India's right in midst of this global Chakravyuh. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me.